start.
Good day, everyone. Today we'll be discussing on elasticity of demand and supply. For the subtopic under review, we'll be looking at the definition, types, and determinants of demand and supply, elasticity of demand and supply. And we compute and make an interpretation on elasticity of demand and supply. We'll be looking at price elasticity of demand, price elasticity of supply, income elasticity of supply, then cross price elasticity of demand. Previously, we've discussed on how demand and supply curves determine the equilibrium price and quantity of a commodity in a market system. So today we'll be discussing on changes in this price and price of demand and the quantity that will be supplied. So which will lead us to what is known as elasticity of demand and elasticity of supply. Although many businesses and government policy depend crucially on judgment regarding the elasticity of demand and supply for various goods and services. So now we'll be discussing on these two changes on both price and demand with supply. Price elasticity of demand. This is defined as a measure the responsiveness of quantity demanded for a good or services to the change in the price of the goods. That is what is known as price elasticity of demand. So this is determined by the quantity of goods and services that will be demanded for, that will determine the change in price of such goods and services. As we have discussed under the quantity demand and supply, where we note the law of demand and the law of supplies, which means, or which states that when there is high in price, there will be a reduction in the quantity that will be demanded. On the other hand, when there is reduction in the quantity that is demanded, that simply means the price of the goods and services is reducing in the market. So it is expressed as a ratio of percentage change in quantity demanded to percentage change in the commodity's own price. So price elasticity of demand and supply, the change between the price and quantity demanded for, is being determined by the commodity and the quantity with the price of each goods and or services that will be demanded for. So if elasticity of demand of a given product is expected to be computed, so the formula to determine the elasticity of demand is given as percentage change in quantity demanded and percentage change in price. What does this percentage change mean? We are looking at the difference between what was demanded for previously and the current quantity of demand. So the same thing is applicable to percentage change in price. The previous price, the old price, compared with the new price. So the differentiation between the quantity demanded and quantities and the price of the commodities is what is known as elasticity of demand. Now let's take a look at types of elasticity of demand. Basically, we're having 5 degrees types of elasticity of demand. One, which is known as elastic demand. A goods or services may be called elastic demand when a demand for a good is price elastic if a given percentage change in price causes a greater percentage in quantity demanded. That is what is known as elastic demand. That is, the price or the percentage of increase in price is being determined that will lead to a greater percentage change in quantity demanded. That is what is referred to as elastic demand. In simple terms, the difference between the price of a commodity by comparing old price with the current price may cause a greater increase in the price or in the quantity that will be demanded. Let's take, for instance, if the price of a commodity in the past 2 months is 50 naira, and the same price of this same commodity with the same taste, with the same quantity, is now reducing to 30 naira. So that will cause a significant change in the quantity that will be demanded. In that manner, the quantity that will be demanded will be higher than what it was before. So definitely the demand will be what? Will also high. Once the price is reducing, the demand will be increasing. That is elastic demand. The percentage change in price can cause a greater percentage change in quantity demanded. The other way around, or alternatively, when the price of a commodity in the past 2 months was 50 naira, and the same quantity of goods and the same value, the same taste, the price is increasing after 2 months to 150 naira, that will cause a greater percentage change in the quantity demanded. And what will happen? The demand will reduce in that aspect. So the demand curve will exhibit a gentle slope. And this will be shown in the next paragraph that we are going to display. So that's what is known as elastic demand. We move on to inelastic demand. Here, demand for a commodity is price inelastic if a given percentage change in price causes a lesser percentage change in quantity demanded. So here, demand curve will exhibit a steep slope, and this will also be shown in the next slide. Interpretation to this inelastic demand is that when the demand for a commodity is price inelastic, in a situation when a given percentage change in price, that is any change in price, will cause a lesser percentage change in the quantity that will be demanded. Variably, this is the opposite of the elastic demand. In elastic demand, a given percentage change in price will cause a what? A greater percentage change in quantity demanded. Here, a given percentage in price will cause a lesser percentage change in what? In quantity demanded. Under the elastic demand, the lower the price, the higher the quantity that will be demanded. And under inelastic demand, the higher the price, the lower the quantity that will be demanded. So this is a graphical representation of elastic and inelastic demand. As we can see, the slope of quantity demanded under the elastic demand shows that when a price of a given commodity is reducing, the demand will be increasing. As we can see from P2, demand of Q2 increases to P1 when the quantity demanded also was increased. Looking at inelastic demand, the change in price affected the quantity demanded when the price of the commodity increases. We move on to the next types of elasticity of demand, which is unit elastic demand. Demand for a commodity is unit price elastic. That is, if a given percentage change in price causes equal percentage change in quantity demanded. This means that the price of a commodity remaining the same for a specific period of time will also cause equal percentage change in quantity that will be demanded. There won't be too much of increase in price, whereas the quantity that will be demanded will not be having too much of what? Changes. We have perfect elasticity of demand. This is caused when consumer will not buy the commodity at all for any change, either increasing or decreasing in price. So the demand curve is horizontal as shown in the next slide that we are going to show. So elasticity of demand is known to be perfectly elastic in a situation when consumer will not buy the commodity at all for any changes, either the price is increasing or decreasing. You can make use of some of these consumable products. The price increases from unit of 100 naira to 150 naira. You can see there are some categories of people, because of the changes in that price, the commodity remain movable in the market. So the difference in that price, the consumer may decide not to buy the commodity at all. So in a situation when a consumer decides not to buy a given commodity at all, so that is what is referred, either due to change in price, either increase or decrease. That is what is known as perfectly elastic demand. We have perfectly inelastic demand. So the demand for a commodity is perfectly inelastic if quantity demanded remains unchanged, whether the change increases or decreases in price. Either there is an increase in price or decrease in price. So the demand for such commodity will remain unchanged. And that is what is referred to as perfectly inelastic demand. Perfectly elastic demand is a situation when the consumer decided not to buy the commodity at all. Either there is an increase or decrease in price. While perfectly inelastic demand, the quantity demanded will remain unchanged. Either there is an increase or what? Or decrease in the price of the commodity. So this is a pictorial illustration on perfectly elastic demand and perfectly inelastic demand. The perfectly elastic demand shows that either there is an increase or decrease in price. Demand of the commodity will stay stagnant. That is, there won't be any purchase, there won't be any consumption of such goods. While perfectly inelastic demand, this will not affect the quantity demanded, irrespective of any changes in price of the commodity. So the various type of degrees of price elasticity of demand discussed above will attract the range elastic coefficients that will be shown in the table below. We have the elastic demand, we have the inelastic demand, we have unit elastic, perfectly elastic, and perfectly inelastic. So this plus when the price elasticity of demand is shown in the coefficients of the different types of elasticity of demand. The price elasticity of demand is denoted as ED. When it is elastic, that means the price of the commodity will affect the quantity of the goods that will be demanded. So the percentage change in the price will cause a greater percentage change in the quantity demanded. So this is illustrated in the table below. While under the inelastic, any percentage change in price will cause a lesser percentage change in quantity demanded. We have the unit elastic. This is a situation whereby the consumer will make a decision when demand for a commodity in units in a given percentage change causes equal percentage change in quantity demanded. That is, the price and the quantity will remain the same. While the perfectly elastic demand is a situation when the consumer will not buy any of the commodity. Either there is an increase in change in price or there is a decrease in price. While the perfectly inelastic stipulates that the price of a commodity will be determined by the quantity demanded. Either there is an increase or decrease in the price of the commodity. So this is a pictorial illustration on the elasticity of demand and quantity, the price and the quantity demanded. And how do we measure the price elasticity of demand? Under the elasticity of demand, we made mention of price and quantity demanded. And the difference between these two, which is denoted as percentage change in quantity demand divided by percentage change in the price of the commodity. So to compute the price elasticity of demand coefficients, we need to consider the point method and the arc method. So we have two methods to measure price elasticity of demand. So the first one is known as the point method, while the second one is known as the arc method. So the point price elasticity of demand applicable to demand schedule, we have elasticity of demand denoted as ED, percentage change in quantity divided by the quantity multiplied by percentage change in price divided by price. So we have new quantity, that is the current price, the current quantity demanded minus initial quantity. So this is denoted as Q2 minus Q1, that is quantity. Then we have change in price, which is denoted as percentage change in price. We have the new price minus initial price. So the difference between these two will give us the percentage of measuring price elasticity of demand. P is represented by initial price, P1, while P2 is denoted as the new price. Then the second method of measuring price elasticity of demand is the arc method. So we have applicable demand function under the point method. ED is denoted as change in quantity divided by change in price multiplied by price divided by quantity for one independent variables. If there is only single variables, we make use of change in quantity divided by change in price multiplied by change in price divided by change in quantity. So where DQ divided by DP, which is the change in quantity divided by change in price, will be less than or equals to 0. That is differentiation. We differentiate Q with respect to P. This is a practical illustration in the change in price elasticity of demand. If we were given that demand functions of a commodity will be estimated as Q equals to 100 minus 3P. Q represents the quantity demanded. We have 100 minus 3P. Where unit price is 20 naira, compute the price elasticity of demand and interpret your results. So let's take a look at how this can be practically solved. We are given the demand functions to be quantity equals to 100 minus 3P, where the unit price is 20 naira. So we have to compute the price elasticity of demand. So the demand function, we have the function to be quantity, that's Q, which is equals to 100 minus 3P. Minus 3P. So where P is 20, the price is 20, we are told to calculate, to compute the price elasticity of demand. So here, elasticity of demand will be computed using the formula that is percentage change in quantity divided by P. So this will be multiplied by the price divided by quantity. And we're told that we can use with respect to the functions of that demand, where dQ over dP is less than 0. So we differentiate Q with respect to P. Where dQ over dP is less than 0. So what we need to do is to differentiate Q with respect to P. So going by the function stipulates that Q is equals to 100 minus 3P. And we're told that P is 20, the price is 20. And in the computation of price elasticity of demand, ED will be equals to quantity demand divided by quantity, the change in price, change in quantity divided by change in price, multiplied by P divided by Q. All right, when the demand dq over dp is less than 0, so we differentiate q with respect to p. So from the given function, we can see that the quantity is equal to 100 minus 3p. So in this situation, minus 3 is less than 0. So we differentiate with respect to p using the formula here. So this will now be dq over dp. Will be equals to minus 3. And we're told that price is given to be 20. So we need to differentiate this. By substituting elasticity of demand will be equals to minus change in price multiplied by price over quantity. So elasticity of demand will now be equals to our price is less than 0, that is minus 3. We close our brackets. This is representing dq over dp multiplied by p over q. Here, dq over dp is equals to minus 3, where p is 20. So the demand function, we are going to substitute dq over dp into minus 3, and p is given to be 20, then q, which will be the quantity, will be what we are going to determine before we substitute this totally into the elasticity of demand. So if dq over dp is representing minus 3, so that will be minus 3 multiplied by minus 3 multiplied by price over quantity. Minus 3 multiplied by price over quantity, where price is given to be 20. So we need to determine what will be our quantity. So quantity here will now be equals to, that is 100 minus 3p, where p is given to be 20. So this will now be equals to 40. When our Q has been determined to be 40, so we now substitute this into the demand functions to determine what will be our elasticity of demand. So we've gotten our quantity to be 40. Therefore, our elasticity of demand will now be equals to minus 3 multiplied by 20 price, which is given to be 20, divided by quantity that we just determined to be 40. So this will now be represented by 3 multiplied by 20, that gives us 60, divided by 40, divided by 40. So approximately, this will be giving us 1.5. So therefore, elasticity of demand will be equals to 1.5. So using the demand function, and based on the fact that the quantity determine the price, which is less than 0, because the quantity, the demand functions, we are told that quantity is equals to 100 minus 3p, which indicates that minus 3 is less than the price of 20. So using the demand function, by determining our elasticity of demand, using the demand function, the determination of elasticity of demand is given as change in quantity divided by change in price multiplied by price divided by quantity. So where dq over dp is less than 0, we differentiate q with respect to p, and that is given as minus 3. By substitution, dq divided by dp multiplied by p over q, dq over dp is given to be minus 3, where p is given to be 20. And to determine q, using the demand function, quantity, which is equals to 100 minus 3p. So by substituting p, which is equals to 20, into this function, we got our quantity to be 40. Now to determine the elasticity of demand, we make use of 40 as the quantity. So 60, 3 minus 3 multiplied by 20, that gives us 60, divided by 40, we arrive at 60. Divided by 20, we arrive at 60. This divided by 40, that gives us 1.5. So the interpretation of this will now be that the elasticity of demand shows that the demand price is elastic. And why is it elastic? Looking at the 5 types of elasticity of demand, we talk about the elastic demand, the inelastic demand. And why is this elastic? We said the elasticity of demand is said to be elastic when a given percentage change in price will cause a greater percentage change in quantity demanded. And looking at the quantity demanded here, the quantity demanded is 40, and the price given to us is 20. So irrespective of the price, the quantity demanded increase because the price is 20, the quantity demanded increased to what? Increased to 40. And for the price function, we're told that the price is minus 3p. Now, the elasticity of demand is now indicating that this price, the elasticity of demand is increasing due to the fact that the elasticity of demand is greater than 0, which is 1.5. So this indicates that the price of a commodity does not affect the quantity that is being demanded. So with that price, the quantity demanded is still increasing. So therefore, the interpretation to this elasticity of demand is that the types of elasticity of demand in this particular function is elastic demand. So we move on to this slide. We're having cross-elastic demand, income elasticity of demand. We also have the price elasticity of demand for a straight line demand curve. So let's take it one after the other. So we have the own price elasticity of demand. So each of independent variables under the applicable functions of multiple independent variables, we consider the demand function, which will be specified below. We have QDX equals to function of PX to PY into M, where QDX represents demand for commodity X. PX indicates price per unit of commodity X. PY represents price per unit of commodity Y. YM is the money income of consumer. So each of these independent variables, demand for commodity X, price of commodity X, price of commodity Y, and money income for consumer, has its elasticity name after the variable concerned. And this name will mention below. We have the own price elasticity of demand, we have the cross elasticity of demand, and we also have the income elasticity of demand. The own price elasticity of demand with respect to the above specified demand function given here is denoted as EDX, percentage change in quantity demand, divided by money, multiplied by M, divided by quantity demand of X. So the coefficient income elasticity is always positive for normal goods and negative for inferior goods. We are still going to discuss on normal goods and the types of goods. We are still going to discuss on each type of goods that we are having in demand and supply. So the second one, which is the cross elasticity of demand. The cross elasticity of demand measures the responsiveness of the change in the quantity demanded of a commodity when the price of another related commodity changes. So from the demand function above, so the cross elasticity of demand for commodity X, when price of a commodity Y changes, will be measured using this function. We have EDX and Y, change in quantity demand X, change in price multiplied by PY, that is price of a commodity Y, divided by QDX. Then the last one, which is the income elasticity of demand. The income elasticity of demand measures the responsiveness of the quantity demanded of a commodity X to a change in the consumer's income, that is M. All things being equal, the income elasticity of demand is measured as follows. That is change in the quantity demand X divided by change in money multiplied by M divided by quantity demanded of X. Now we move on to price elasticity of demand for straight line demand curve. The price elasticity of demand is not the same along a downward slope straight line demand curve. So for a linear demand curve sloping downward from left to right, the price elasticity of demand starts from infinity, which is indicated with the infinity sign, at the point where the demand curve cuts the price axis and fall as we move downward to the right along the curve of the zero. And this is shown in the figure below. When we are having a perfectly elasticity of demand to be infinity, the demand will be as high as possible. Then when the price of a commodity is elastic, that is, elasticity of demand will be greater than 1. The unit elasticity of demand, which will indicate that elasticity of demand will be equals to 1. That is, the change in price will not affect the change in quantity demanded. And we have inelastic demand. That is a situation whereby elasticity of demand will be greater than, will be less than 1. So then lastly, we have perfectly inelastic. The consumer will determine not to buy, either the price is increasing or reducing. So the elasticity types along a straight line demand curve is indicated using the 5 types of elasticity of demand. Now let's just take a look at the determinants of price elasticity of demand. The price elasticity of demand varies widely across different goods. Some goods have more elastic demand, while others have less elastic. So the major factors that determine price elasticity of demand include the following. The first one is the number of close substitute goods. When there is a large number of close substitute goods, this will form part of the factors that will determine price elasticity of demand. So the more substitute a good has, and the more close the substitutes are, so the more elastic the demand for the goods. For example of this is beverage. Bonvita has a number of close substitutes, such as we have Milo, we have Choco Milo, we have Ovaltine, and so on. So therefore, the demand for Bonvita is likely spaced to be more elastic because the slightest increase in price of Bonvita, consumer of the product will switch to the consumption of one of the substitutes. So if there is an increase in the price of a Bonvita, so consumer will look at a substitute good that are having the same value, the same taste. So from Bonvita, consumer can move on to what? To either Milo or Ovaltine. So on the other hand, if the good does not have any close substitute, if the good does not have any close substitute, the demand tends to be less elastic or inelastic. So for example, there is hardly a substitute to food as a whole. Hence the demand for food as a whole is what? Is inelastic. So in general, food in general, there is no substitute to food, except when the price changes from each categories of the food item. The second determinant of price elasticity of demand is the proportion of income spent on the commodity. Proportion of income spent on the commodity. If the price of a good is relatively low, such the expenditure on it is an insignificant fraction of the most individual or family income. So this will be dependent on the income of individuals. The consumer of such a commodity are insensitive to a price change of the good. So this tends to have inelastic demand. So on the other hand, the price is high and the proportion of income spent on it large, then it tends to have elastic demand. Let's take a look at a typical sample. Salt has relatively low price in Ghana, and families spend a significant percentage of their incomes on salt. So therefore, even if the price of the salt doubles, people find it so difficult in buying the same quantity they used to buy. So irrespective of the price, the consumer will still have to make provision for the purchase of this commodity. So the proportion of income will not affect the consumption of the types of good, making use of salt as a typical sample. We have time. Time is also one of the determinants of price elasticity of demand. Demand for a product tends to be more elastic in the longer period of time and less elastic in the shorter period of time. So this is because consumers need a longer time to adjust to changes in price. In the case of substitutes like electricity and gas cookers, so if the price of the electricity goes up, it will take time for consumers to switch over from electricity cooker to gas cooker. For consumers, need time to acquire the gadgets. So time also causes one of the determinants of price elasticity of demand. We have the number of possible uses. A commodity has high price elasticity of demand if it can be put into so many uses. So with such a commodity, so if the price changes, the response of quantity demanded to the price of change become significant when changes in quantity demanded for each use are put together. So the numbers of possible uses, the numbers of times at which a commodity is being consumed or used. For instance, a commodity such as sugar is used for direct consumption. That is, baking bread and cake, making jam, and so many other usage. So thus, the demand for sugar may be fairly elastic based on the numbers of times of usage. Habit-forming commodities, another determinant of price elasticity of demand. And this is because of difference in goods and services. Some commodities are habit-forming while others are not. For habit-forming commodities, they tend to have less elastic or inelastic demand because once the habit is formed, it is a bit difficult to break away from it when the price of the commodity increases, even significantly. For instance, the habit of smoking cigarettes, once habit of smoking cigarettes is formed, it is difficult to break away when the price of the cigarette increases. Non-habit forming commodities tend to have more elastic demand. We move on to the next determinant of price elasticity of demand, which is luxuries and necessities. Luxuries are things we can always do away. When they tend to have elastic demand, why necessities are difficult to dispense with. So you can't dispose necessity. So therefore, they tend to have inelastic demand. Lastly, we have durability of the commodity, the time frame. So with some commodities, we require one at a time, and they are used for a very long time before the goods spoil. Example of this type of goods are, we have cars, televisions, furniture, building, clothes. So they tend to have low elasticity of demand because of the durability. So because when the price of a durable commodity changes, consumer will continue to use what they have. So this is one of the factors or the determinants of price elasticity of demand. So durability of the commodity will tell the consumer not to buy till when the one that is in use expires. So even when the price of such commodity falls, it is new consumer who will mostly buy them. Now we move on to price elasticity of demand and total revenue. Total revenue is the product of a commodity's market price, which is represented as P, and the quantity of the commodity purchased, that's Q, quantity. TR, which is total revenue, will be equals to price multiplied by quantity purchased. The numbers of quantity purchased multiplied by the price of each quantity will be given as total revenue. The net effect of a price change on total revenue is determined by the size of the change is relative to the size of the change in the quantity demanded. If demand is elastic, a fall in price increases to the total revenue, while a rise in price reduces total revenue, because the higher the price, the lower the quantity that will be demanded. And with that, the total revenue will be reducing. But when the price reduces, the more the quantity that will be demanded. At the end of the period, the quantity, higher quantity multiplied by the price of each quantity demanded will make the total revenue to increase. So if demand is inelastic, a fall in price reduces total revenue, while a rise in price increases total revenue. If demand is unit elastic, a change in price does not affect total revenue. See, this effect can be shown in a tabular table. Price elasticity of demand and total revenue. We have the elastic demand. Total revenue will decrease as price increases under the elastic demand, whereby total revenue will increase as price decreases. In inelastic demand, total revenue increases as price increases, while total revenue decreases as price decreases. Unitary elastic demand, total revenue remains unchanged for an increase or decrease in price. Now we move on to price elasticity of supply. Price elasticity of supply measures the responsiveness of quantity supplied of a commodity to the change in price of the commodity. So it is expressed as the ratio of percentage change in quantity supply to the change in the commodity's own price. If elasticity supply, ES, denotes price elasticity of supply, it follows that elasticity of supply will be determined as percentage change in quantity supply divided by percentage change in price. Let's take a look at types of price elasticity of supply, the same way we did under the elasticity of demand. There are 5 types of price elasticity of supply, which I explained below. We have the elastic supply. We have inelastic supply. We have uniquely elastic supply, perfectly elastic supply, and perfectly inelastic supply. So let's take it one after the other. The elastic supply. Supply for goods is price elastic if a given percentage change in price causes a greater percentage change in quantity supplied. So the supply curve will exhibit a gentle slope, and this will be shown in the next slide. Elastic supply is said, a price of goods supply is said to be elastic if a given percentage change in price causes a greater percentage change in quantity supplied. Inelastic supply. Supply for a good is price inelastic if a given percentage change in price causes a lesser percentage change in quantity supplied. So this is a typical graphical representation of elasticity of supply and inelastic supply. We have the unit 3 elastic supply. Supply of a commodity is said to be unit 3 elastic supply when a supply of a commodity is given if a given percentage change in price, when any percentage change in price will causes equal percentage change in quantity supply. That is, the percentage change in supply will make the percentage change in quantity supply to be equal. We have the perfectly elastic supply. Supply is perfectly price elastic if the sellers are willing to offer all the available quantity for sale at the prevailing price only. That is, at the general market price. The supplier are willing to offer all the available quantity for sale. So supply is alternatively said to be in infinite price elastic. And lastly, we have perfectly inelastic supply. So supply is perfectly price inelastic if a change in price causes no change in supply. The change in price will not have any effect on change in supply. So the supply curve is vertical, and the price elasticity of supply coefficient is 0. So measurement, how do we measure price elasticity of supply? To compute price elasticity of supply, we consider the point method and the arc method as done under measurement of price elasticity of demand. So point price elasticity of supply, applicable to a supply schedule. Elasticity of supply, ES, is calculated as change in quantity divided by change in price multiplied by price over quantity. Note that there is no minus sign in this formula as it's obtained under price elasticity of demand. We're having minus under the change in quantity divided by change in price under the elasticity of demand. But here in elasticity of supply, there is no minus in the formula, which represents change in quantity divided by change in price multiplied by price over quantity. The application to supply function, ES, which is change in price divided by change in quantity divided by change in price multiplied by price over quantity for one independent variable. So where change in quantity divided by change in price is greater than 0, supply function has a positive slope. For 2 or more independent variables, we have this formula. So arc price method, we have change in price, change in quantity divided by change in price, multiplied by old price, P1 divided by Q1 plus P2 divided by Q2. And the types of price elasticity of supply coefficients. The types: elastic, inelastic, units or unitary, perfectly elastic and perfectly inelastic. Now let's take a look at the determinants of price elasticity of supply. The price elasticity of supply also varies widely across different products based on different products and their changes. Some products have the more elastic supply, while others have less elastic supply. So the major factors that determine price elasticity of supply include the following. Number one, we have the availability and mobility of factors of production. If factors of production are available and mobile, then supply responds quickly and largely to a change in price of a product. And what are the types? What are the variables? What are the factors of production? We have the land, we have the labor, we have the capital, and lastly, the entrepreneur. So if there is availability and mobility of these factors of production, the supply responds quickly and largely to the change in price of a product. So supply tends to be more elastic and inelastic under contrary situation. Influence of the weather. These are other factors or determinants of price elasticity of supply. If output is controlled by weather conditions, that is production output is being affected by weather conditions, as in case of agricultural products, the output cannot be controlled by the producer. So hence, the supply of such products tends to be less elastic or inelastic. We have the level of technology, another determinant of price elasticity of supply. The level of technology, the extent to which output can be increased depends on the level of technology employed by the producer. So we have advanced technology used in production tends to make the supply of a product more elastic. So advancements in technology in production, which tends to make the supply of a product to be more elastic. We have cost of production as one of the determinants of price elasticity of supply. If the cost involved in the production of a product is very high, output cannot be easily increased when the market price increases, unless the increase in price is great enough to absorb the cost. We have degree of perishability as one of the determinants of price elasticity of supply. Degree of perishability. So the supply of highly a perishable commodity is relatively inelastic, and that of a less perishable commodity is relatively elastic. Highly perishable goods cannot be stocked. Most perishable goods cannot be stocked for a longer period to be released when price, for instance, increases. Lastly, we have time, or what is known as gestation period. Supply elasticity to be greater in the longer period. The longer period, the easier it is to shift factors of production among products. So following a change in their relative prices, so you can change the factors of production easily when there is a longer period. So this holds for agricultural product because of the natural time lag between planting and harvesting of a crop. So in the short run, the supply of most products tends to be relatively inelastic. We move on to income elasticity of demand. As discussed under the elasticity of supply, where we made mention of income. Income elasticity of demand measures the responsiveness of quantity demanded of a commodity to the change in the average consumer's income. That is, any effects on the income of individual or consumers will affect the price, will affect the commodity, the demand, the quantity that will be demanded for. So it is expressed as the ratio of percentage change in quantity demanded to the percentage change in consumers' income. Income elasticity of demand, which is equals to percentage change in quantity demanded divided by percentage change in income. So income will be determined by quantity of goods to be demanded. Now let's take a look at types of income elasticity of demand. We have 5 types of degree of income elasticity of demand identifiable in literature. We have the elastic demand, inelastic demand, negative income elasticity of demand, unit income elastic, and perfectly inelastic demand. Elastic demand. This is the case when quantity demanded changes by a greater percentage than the percentage change in consumers' income. In this case, the income elasticity of demand coefficient is positive and greater than 1. This indicates that when quantity demanded changes by a greater percentage change than in the percentage change in the consumer's income. So the commodity is described as normal good. We have inelastic demand. This is the case when the quantity demanded, the numbers of quantity demanded, changes by a smaller percentage than that of income. It is said to be elastic when the change in quantity demanded is increasing in a greater percentage than the percentage change in consumers' income, while it is known to be inelastic when the changes in the quantity demanded is in smaller percentage than that of income. So the income elasticity of demand coefficient is positive, but less than 1 under the inelastic demand. So the commodity is still described as a normal good as well. We have negative income elasticity of demand. This is the case when quantity demanded falls and consumer income increases. Income is increasing and quantity demanded is what? Is reducing. This is known as negative income elasticity of demand. The income elasticity of demand coefficient is less than 0. So the income elasticity of demand coefficient is less than 0, that is negative. The commodity is described as inferior goods. So this is the indication in a situation why the quantity demanded is reducing and consumer income is increasing. That means the quality of goods available are what? Inferior. We have unit income elastic. This is when percentage increase or decrease in income causes equal percentage increase or decrease in quantity demanded. That is, individual consumer make request on quantity or demand for a quantity based on their income. The income elasticity of demand coefficient is equals to 1 in this situation, unit income elastic. And lastly, we have the perfectly inelastic demand. So this occurs when any change in income leaves quantity demanded of a commodity remains unchanged. So the income elasticity of demand coefficients will be equals to 0. Now, do we measure income elasticity of demand? We have the point method. EY, which is percentage change in quantity divided by percentage change in income multiplied by income divided by quantity for demand schedule. EY for demand function having one independent variables. Change in quantity divided by change in income multiplied by income divided by quantity. The ARC method, change in quantity divided by change in income multiplied by Y1 plus Y2 divided by Q2 minus Q1. We have the interpretation of income elastic coefficients. Interpretation. Usually, it is the sign of the income elasticity of demand coefficient, which is explained though. So we can also explain the magnitude of the coefficient as we do for price elasticity of demand. So the interpretation of income elasticity coefficients is being determined by the following types of goods. We have the superior good. What do we know as superior good? This is when the income elasticity of demand coefficient is positive and greater than 1, meaning that as income increases by a given percentage, the percentage demanded for the good will increase more than that of income. So these are superior good. We have normal good. This is when income elasticity of demand coefficient is positive, but less than or equals to 1, meaning that as income increases by a given percentage, demand for the goods will increase less than the given percentage increase in income. We have inferior goods. A good is described as inferior when its income elasticity of demand coefficient is negative, meaning less will be demanded as income rises. Necessity goods. A necessity good is one whose income elasticity of demand coefficient is 0, neutral number, meaning that the demand for the good is insensitive to change in income. So when the coefficient without the sign is less than 1, its demand is income inelastic. If greater than 1, its demand is income elastic, and when equals to 0, its demand is income unit elastic. Let's take a look at this illustration. Consider the following demand schedule for a good. We have period 1 and period 2. Income, and we have the demand. 50,000, 70,000, demand 200 and 250. You are required to calculate for the good, point income elasticity of demand and interpret your results. And secondly, arc income elasticity of demand and interpret your results. So let's display this. Income elasticity of demand. The income function, which is denoted as EY, we are told to make use of two methods. The first one is the point method. Point method, using the point method. So the income elasticity of demand is denoted to be EY, which is equals to, we have the changes in quantity, changes in Q, divided by changes in Y, as changes in income, yes, changes in income, divided by changes in Y, which represents the income, multiplied by the income itself, divided by quantity. Let's go back to the slide. So income, when income is 50,000 in period 1, quantity demanded is 200. In period 2, when income is 70,000, the demand is what? Is 250. And we're told to determine what will be the price. We are required to calculate the elasticity of demand using the point income method. And we are told to calculate the income elasticity of demand using the point method. So here, we need to determine change in quantity. Change in quantity will be, we have quantity in the first period. First period quantity is 200, while the second period is 250. So new is 250, old is 200. 250 minus 200. Then we also check the change in income. Change in income. New is 70, while old is 50. We have 70,000 minus 50. So the changes are, this is 20,000, while this is 50. So in calculating the income elasticity of demand using the elasticity of income function, EY, which will now be equals to change in quantity, this is 50, divided by change in income. Change in income is given to be 20,000 multiplied by income. So this will represent the current income of 50,000, and the current demand is 200. 50,000 divided by 200. So on the long run, the elasticity of income will now be equals to, this will give us 0.63. So the interpretation to this will be that the good is income elastic, and this is a normal condition. Why is it that? This is because looking at the definition of the elastic demand under the types of income elasticity of demand, the elastic demand shows that this is the case when quantity demanded changes by a greater percentage than the percentage change in income in the consumer's income. So let's take a look at the second method, which is the ARC income elasticity of demand and this interpretation. So using the ARC income method, the ARC method, which represents percentage change in quantity divided by percentage change in income multiplied by Y1 plus Y2 divided by Q2 plus Q1. So let's illustrate this, the ARC method. Using the ARC method, the elasticity of income will be represented by percentage change in income, a percentage change in quantity divided by percentage change in income multiply by Q1 plus divided by Q2 plus Q1. So we've determined the percentage change in quantity and percentage change in income. So this will now be represented by change in quantity here is 50 divided by 200, that is change in income. So this will now be multiplied by Y1. Y1 represents the current income, the year one income, which is 50,000 plus year two, 70,000 divided by Q2, year two in quantity and year one quantity, that's 200 plus 250. So this will remain 50 divided by 200 multiplied by 120,000 divided by 450. So approximately this gives us 0.67. I will move on to the next discussion, which is the cross-price elasticity of demand. The cross-price elasticity of demand measures the responsiveness of quantity demanded of one good or services to the change in the price of another good. And this is expressed as a ratio of percentage change in quantity demanded of one commodity to percentage change in the price of another commodity. So cross-price elasticity of demand is measuring the outcome of quantity demanded in one goods or services to the change in price of another goods. So for two commodities, A and B, cross-price elasticity of demand for commodity A with respect to the price of commodity B will be denoted as EAB. And the computation of cross-price elasticity of demand will now be percentage change in quantity demanded of A divided by percentage change in price of B. So this is two independent variables. That is, this measures the changes or responsiveness of quantity demanded of one good to the change in the price of another good. So the responsiveness of one quantity demanded in the categories of goods to a change in the price of another goods. So this is denoted as percentage change in quantity demanded of A, which will be given, divided by percentage change in price of B. So we're having types of cross-price elasticity of demand, which is 6 in number. The table below shows the 6 types of cross-price elasticity of demand and interpretation of their coefficients. We have high cross elasticity, where 1 is greater than cross elasticity of demand of A and B, which is cross elasticity of changes in quantity demanded of A and percentage change in price of B will be less than infinity. So A and B are close substitute. That means A and B are close substitute. We have no cross elasticity of demand when the cross price elasticity of demand is less than 0 or greater than 1. That is, A and B are poor substitutes. Demand of one commodity will be different from the changes in price of another commodity. We have the unit cross elasticity. Unit cross elasticity is denoted as percentage change in quantity demanded of A divided by percentage change in quantity demanded of B is less than 0. That is equals to 1. And we have the negative cross elasticity. When it is less than 0, A and B are complementary goods. And where A and B is equals to infinity, that represents that A and B are perfect substitutes. And 0 cross elasticity indicates that where the percentage change in quantity demanded and percentage change in price of another commodity indicates that A and B are not related. Let's take a look at this sample, and we call it a day. Consider the following data on goods A and B. Group A, and we have group B. Price of a group A and quantity demanded, and we have price of group B with their quantity demanded. We are required to calculate cross-price elasticity of demand for commodity A with respect to the price of commodity B. State the relationship between commodity A and B using your results in 1 above. price of a group A, 20, quantity is 200, 30, and 300. So we are told to calculate the price, cross price elasticity of demand. We have cross price elasticity of demand. And the formula is given as EAB, which represents percentage change in quantity demanded of A, divided by percentage change in quantity demanded of, and in the change in price of B. We have percentage change in quantity demanded of A divided by percentage change in price of B. I'm given two groups, group A and group B. Price of a group A, we have 20 and quantity demanded is 200, 30 quantity demanded is 300. In group B, we have price 50, quantity demanded of 100, and we have price of 60 with quantity demanded of 80. We are to calculate the cross price elasticity of demand for commodity A with respect to price of commodity B. So let's take a look at percentage change in quantity demanded in A quantity demanded, new quantity is 300, old quantity is 200. We have 60 and we also have 80, 60 and 50 in group B. $200 minus 300 then the price change in price here for commodity B. In B, price is 60 to 50. That is 60 minus 50. So this gives us 100 divided by 10.